I'll be interviewing Gary Bennett today on August 30th, 2012 in Mackin House Museum. Alright, so how long have you been living in Coquitlam, Gary?
My whole life, 68 years.
Where do you live as a child?
We lived on Smith Avenue, and our land was acreage. It was what they call VLA land that my dad got after the Second World War because he was a veteran. And we had 2.5 acres there on Smith that went halfway back to Como Lake. And the halfway street was Reagan. And the old house is still there, and that's where I've spent most of my time. Now, at some time, my parents did subdivide the land, and we moved into we had an orchard in the front yard. So we took down the trees and built a new house there, which is on Smith. And the other house, the original homestead, is on Townley, which is the street they put down when they subdivided the land.
What year was it when you guys subdivided the land?
When they subdivided the land, let's see. Not till the 50s. Let's see, I was in school, elementary, let's say 1960.
1960s, around there.
Yeah.
When you guys were at the old house,
Yes.
how's the neighborhood? Was there a lot of community gathering, some activities?
Well, all those houses on that street were on acreage, so there was a fair piece between each. Well, not too far. Community spirit and things. I don't think we had a lot of get-togethers. A lot of kids, so we played together. Parents all knew each other. I can't remember any neighborhood parties. That wasn't the thing to do at those days. I know my parents had the farm there, and they worked from dawn to dusk on this acreage, which we had anything from cows to chickens and pigs, and things are just starting to come back to me now here. After the Second World War, the government came up with a lot of ideas for veterans to raise money. And one of the things they were promoting was rabbits. They figured this was going to be the protein of the future. And so my dad got into raising rabbits, and we had rabbits on this acreage in sheds. And the neighbor raised pheasants, and the people behind us raised mink. It was all sort of government-sponsored things, or let's say the government put out brochures on how you could do those sort of things. And the rabbits didn't work out. Rabbit meat never caught on in British Columbia or North America. And then my parents went for more or less subsistence farming. In those days, you tried to raise as much food as you could. I remember getting our first freezer, which was a really big thing, because before that we had, I forget the name of it. It's when you dig a hole in the ground and put the earth over top of it, sort of an earthen storage bin for keeping the vegetables cool. But they grew a lot, and we slaughtered the cows and the pigs ourselves, and provided a lot of those things. So back to your thing about the community, most everybody there was working really hard, and so there wasn't a lot of playtime. But that was just my dad's second job, as he was an electrical instructor at the BC Penitentiary, which is now gone, but that's where he worked at the penitentiary for his life, and then but the farm and the things, when they got home, that's what they went out and cut the hay and fed the cows and the pigs and the chickens and all those things. Yes. So that reminds me, you get into talking about the penitentiary. One of the benefits of the penitentiary for all those employees was that there was a series of cupboards, little pigeonholes by the front gate. and everybody got a loaf of bread at night. And so I was raised on a lot of brown bread made by the inmates. And another advantage of my dad working there is a lot of our clothes were made there, because at the time the penitentiary was fully the penitentiary, the jail, was fully self-sufficient, and it did extend up for many blocks all the way up into Westminster there, Westminster. The pants were made there, and my shoes, and other things. So that was one sort of advantage that I had. But the pants were a terrible yellow color, and they lasted forever. Never, but they were really good play clothes. But anyhow, I diverse there. So anyhow,
What, does it still exist today?
the what?
The pen.
The jail? No, the jail was closed, and it's now condominiums facing the Fraser River. So when you drive the lower road, or you drive into Westminster up on the right-hand side, they still have save the main walls, and they have the cafe there, but it's now surrounded by condominiums.
What year did it close down?
I don't remember. I know I was probably in high school, so maybe in the early 70s.
As a child, which school did you go to?
I went to Mountain View Elementary School. It was a 4-room school, and it still has the main 4 rooms up there, but it's been added a lot of rooms at the lower level. Yeah.
What kind of school activities do you guys have?
School activities. That's a long way back to remember that, in the early 50s. Well, let's see here. We played baseball. I can't remember soccer. Not football in the elementary. I know in those days, May Day celebrations were really big in Coquitlam. And I know that we had to march and practice for doing things. And we did the maypole dance around the pole there to make the pattern with the ribbons. But a long time ago, I can't remember too much about elementary school. I just went to school and did the school things.
So about the May Day celebration, can you tell me more about it?
Well, it was up at, let's see, what's that park called? Blue Mountain Park. It was usually a big parade, and that you paraded around and drove in and up onto the grounds there, and it was, we had those arcade people come in with rides and do all sorts of other things. And it was a big event. Basically, it was phased out by Coquitlam. I don't know why they decided to stop doing it, but they still do it in Port Coquitlam, but not in Coquitlam.
And it was a yearly event?
Yearly event, yes, in May. And I remember I was a Boy Scout at some time, and we had a float, and I remember helped decorating it and marching in the parade.
You talked about children used to play together in your neighborhood.
Yes.
Is there a specific place that you guys used to?
Just in each other's yards. I can remember we used to have fun playing kick the can, all running and hiding, and sometimes there'd be 10 or 12 of us all running around. But there wasn't. Park was a long way off, which is Blue Mountain Park, has always been there, and there wasn't any close parks in the neighborhood, and we didn't bother going up the schoolyard.
How was the security back then at your neighborhood? Was it, have any of you or your neighbors been robbed, or?
No, I don't think we had any problem with crime in those days. Not that I can remember. So nothing to speak of.
How about the police station? Was it close around?
You know, I don't even know whether we had police. We must have had police. Whether it's always been the RCMP? I'm trying to remember where the police station was. Can't remember.
No problem.
I know the city hall was straight across the street. Oh, and I think the police was with the city hall. As a matter of fact, they were off to a little add-on lower level.
How about the fire station?
Fire station. Okay, fire hall. Fire hall. Old fire hall. I think the oldest one closest by, there was one in the corner of Blue Mountain Park. It's now gone. It's just a vacant parking lot. And they built a new one.
Was there any major fires around your neighborhood that you recall?
I do recall, as a matter of fact. It's interesting. 2 streets over, a house caught fire and burnt down. And that was a major event when everybody walked over and saw the house burn down.
When, do you remember the year it was?
No, I don't. Let's see. Elementary, high school. It probably would be, 1964 or something, whatever. Talking about big fires, I remember Coquitlam Shopping Center caught fire and burnt down when I was going to university, because I remember parents said, "Do you want to go down and look at the fire? The shopping center's burning." And I said, no, I was too tired. So that might have been 65, 66.
So you didn't really attend, didn't go check out the big fire?
No, I didn't go down there for.
How about hospitals back then around the neighborhood? Where do you guys go to when you guys get sick?
Well, the hospital was the Royal Columbian. Let me back up a little. Smith that we lived on was a gravel road, and the nearest drugstore was in Sapperton, Miller's drugstore, and that thing was also the nearest grocery store. There was a Shop Easy in Sapperton, and that was the closest, because Coquitlam didn't have any really big stores in the early part of my life. I think when Coquitlam Plaza opened up, that was a really big thing, because they had the big plaza here, and I don't know exactly when it opened up, but I know it was a big event, because we didn't have to drive into to Sapperton then. Talking about streets, I was going to tell you that the street behind us, which is parallel to Smith, which was Coma Lake. Coma Lake in those days was a gravel road also, and up where Best School is, that was where the garbage dump was, and also where the rifle range. People would go up there to shoot, and it sort of stopped at the end of the rifle range. Because I remember going up with my parents dumping garbage. Didn't dump a lot. In those days, you looked after your own, because we had acreage. We burned quite a bit in our barrel, burned the cans, and then we threw the cans in a bit of a ravine, and we'd hope that they would rust away and decompose.
So, back to the farms.
Yes.
Was there some kind of a marketplace that people would sell the food, or?
No. Basically, everything went in our freezer, and we just ate everything ourselves. So I can't remember my parents buying carrots or lettuce, all sort of stuff. Everything was there, and we had raspberries and just consumed things ourselves.
What kind of entertainment was there around back then?
Entertainment. Okay, for entertainment, we had to go into New Westminster, and that was on Columbia Street. There was 2 theaters. One was called the Columbian, and one was called the Paramount. And you would take the bus. The bus was the Columbia Stage Lines bus, and on Saturday, you'd take the bus in to see the movie. It cost 18 cents for a bus ticket to get in, 18 cents to get back. I think you could save a bit by buying little tickets. And that was basically the entertainment.
Was there anything in Coquitlam?
No.
No.
Nothing in Coquitlam.
So how do you guys pass time if you guys decide to stay in Coquitlam?
Let's see. Bicycle riding. My parents usually wanted me to work, so that's when I got Saturday afternoon off. But if I had any extra time, I would work with the chickens and looking after feeding the pigs, cutting the grass, doing all that sort of stuff. So there wasn't very much time to get into mischief. You know, we could get into mischief on the Saturday afternoon. We went down to Westminster, but everybody knew you, so you had to behave yourself.
You talked about bicycle riding.
Yes.
Was there a specific route that you took?
No, just ride up and down. I used to, we'd ride the bicycle. That was interesting because Mountain View School had a big bicycle shed because that was popular at the time. So we had a long shed where we kept the bicycles in, and there might be 50 to 100 bicycles, so people would ride their bicycles to school and ride them back. So we didn't get rides with your parents, and because your parents were already off to work, or they maybe only had one vehicle, and the main worker, which is usually the male in those days, had taken it off to work. So no, you just have to ride your bicycle to school or walk yourself.
Other than bicycle and walking, was there any other sort of transportation choices around?
No, because the bus only went along Blue Mountain, and so no. No rollerblades, because it's kind of hard to rollerblade on gravel, and same thing for skateboard.
So afterwards, after when you guys moved to another area, what was your major reason to move?
You mean when I finished university?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me back up. Well, I went to Mountain View School, and then Mountain View had from there we went to Winslow, and Winslow was on shift. It was interesting too. Winslow was on shift, and my parents thought I needed a full day at school, so they enrolled me in Our Lady of Lourdes, which was a local Catholic school down here, and I went to that for 1 year, and then back up to Winslow when they were off shift. And then from there I graduated from Como Lake High School, and Como Lake High School, the year grade 12 class was graduating, the rumor was that Simon Fraser, well, not really rumor, Simon Fraser University had started, and they knew they were going to build Simon Fraser. So the school district decided to put on an extra year called grade 13 for those people that were waiting for Simon Fraser to open. So from there I went grade 13, an extra year at Como Lake. There was 2 classes of it, I guess about 60 people, and then we went up to Simon Fraser when it opened up in 1965 as charter students. And you're talking what I did afterwards? Well, I went to Simon Fraser, did 11 semesters in a row to get educated, and then I went out and was lucky enough to get a teaching job in Coquitlam, bought my first house in Millardville, and that was where I ended up living because it was a smaller house. I was able to get a house for $18,000. Bought this house for $18,000, and I can remember because my mortgage payments were $154 a month, and we were unsure whether we could pay for it or I could pay for it myself, because when I first started teaching, I only started at $5,800 a year, and but luckily I met the girl of my dreams, got married, and with 2 incomes, we were able to make mortgage payments, and everything was doing fine.
What year did you move into Millardville?
Let's see, when I finished university, which would have been 1970.
And then what year and where did you start your teaching career?
I started, well, I started in 1971. I'm trying to back this up. No, I started in 1970. Lived at home for the first part of the year, so I saved some money because I've got a job, and that's when I bought the house. It's at the end of 1970, with a mortgage and a large student loan. Well, in those days, large student loan was $5,000. I thought I'd never get that paid off. So anyhow, and then we lived there and got married, my wife, and we saved paid off the mortgage, and then we bought a lot up by Harborview School, if you're familiar with that area there. $32,000. We paid it off at $1,000 a month, and when we got that lot all paid off, then we sold our house in Millardville and had enough money to get a house built for us, and we're still there.
Where exactly is your house right now?
It's on Merritt Street, which is very close to the actual Como Lake. Merritt Street, and it's parallel to Porter and Gatensbury and Lillian and then that area there.
So when you first started your teaching career,
Yes.
was there any school board or teaching union?
I first started teaching at Porter Street Elementary School. We had 41 kids in the classroom, and I tried riding my bicycle up the hill, but Millardville was down the bottom of the hill. It was kind of tough riding, so I usually drove. And that's where I taught for about 10 or 15 years at that school.
And was there any school board?
Yes, we had a school board. School board was, I think where it is now, in the school board office is on Poirier.
So where do you continue your teaching afterwards?
Well, after a while, I specialized and went into teaching kids with special needs. And I stayed at that school, but I had a class of slow learners of 12 students that I helped. And then afterwards, they transferred my class over to Coronation Park, which was just a new school close to Eagle Ridge Hospital. And then after a while, the government decided that special classes weren't the answer, and they put all the students went back into the regular classroom. It was integrated, and I went back to the regular classroom too. And I finished up my last 10 years of teaching grade 5 and grade 6 at Cedar Drive in Port Coquitlam.
What year did the government stop the program for the special needs?
Oh, these are tough questions. It was sort of phased out gradually, so about 20 years ago. Let's see, I've been retired for 10, and I went back to regular classroom for 10. So, let's see, what are we now, 2012, 92, maybe, 85, 87, something like that.
Was there any reason why they decided to not continue this program?
My opinion is that a couple parents in the States decided to sue the school board because their kids were not integrated. And then some parents in Ontario decided to start suing, and it looked like the parents were going to win, and that all the school boards were going to be found at fault for segregating their special needs students. So the school boards across Canada reacted and saying we need to close down our special schools, which was a bit of a mistake in my opinion, because we had in the district a school called Sunny Cedars and Sunny Park, and where kids with severe mental handicap went to get taught life skills, and as well as the ones I had, which was the slow learners, which they were working 3 or 4 years behind. So anyhow, they decided to integrate them all back into the regular classroom, which has been a challenge for a lot of teachers. And then as it worked out, the parents lost their lawsuit back in Ontario, and saying that the school district is okay to segregate them. But by then, they'd thrown out the baby with the bathwater, as the expression goes, and there's no going back. So now all of those kids most of them are in the regular. Coquitlam still has a couple specialty classes for behavior problems, but most of the special needs are all back in the regular classroom, which makes it a lot of stress for the regular teachers because they get a wide range in your classroom.
Do you remember when did this program started? What's it?
No, I don't. Which program do you mean?
The special need, where they separated.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, it's been going on for forever. So the particular teacher that I took over for, she'd been doing it for years and years and years.
Back when you were a child, were there any segregation between like students?
There must have been, but I can't remember too much. In those days, if you say you taught grade 4, it was more or less a homogeneous grouping, so that most everybody could do grade 4 work and was doing grade 4 work. If you had severe learning disabilities, you might have been going off to a different school, or if you were just a little bit behind, you were encouraged to stay an extra year in the primary grades. So by the time students got to grade 4, they might have been held back 1 year, and which was usually enough. Or let me say, the time they got to grade 6, they might have been held back. So that everybody that you had in your classroom as a teacher could do the grade 6 work. Now we've got this wonderful thing called continuous progress, which means they don't hold you back. And so sometimes it's very frustrating for students by the time they get to grade 6 to grade 7 when they're 1 or 2 years behind. But anyhow, I don't run the district, so I can't solve all those particular problems.
Back when you were in high school,
Yes?
do you remember any major events that happened?
I remember the school spirit and the pep rallies for the football teams. We had a teacher up here at Coquitlam called Danny Doyle that was an excellent football coach, and he was we'd have a big challenge and we'd play against New Westminster or some other high schools.
How often are the pep rallies?
Oh, we just have one a year for one. Well, probably just have one big one if we had the big game happening.
And what would be part of the pep rally?
Oh, the team would come out and we'd rah-rah, and somebody probably had the band play some music, and then we'd all say, Friday night we're going to go into Westminster and watch the team play football.
Was there any discipline problems back then in high school?
Discipline problem. Well, you misbehaved, you got strapped. So that solved some of the problems. I remember getting in a fight with some kid and I got strapped. So it's just one of those things. No counseling, just strap. And the strap was interesting because you'd be in a chair like this, and with another teacher, and you'd put your hands out like this, and they'd come and they'd hold a book here, so in case they missed your hand, because they don't want to break all the blood vessels, and then they'd come behind, and the principal would jump up and down and strap your hands, and it was a little painful, yeah. And then you think twice about controlling your anger and stay out of the fights. But the kid pushed me down. Anyhow.
What was his name?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Back then in high school, was there like prom?
I remember going to dances where we try to teach us how to dance. Just a little bit of square dancing. And then there was a Friday night dance we remember going to. Yeah.
But any graduation ceremonies?
Must have been, I guess. Let's see. I honestly can't remember too much about... Oh, yeah, there was. Yes, it's coming back to me. A graduation ceremony. It was in Westminster at the Royal Towers Hotel, and they had a big sort of party for us graduating people.
What kind of activities do you guys do during the graduation?
I think we just had a dance, listened to music, drank some pop, and that's about it.
Back when you guys were in high school,
Yes.
was drugs and alcohol major issues?
No. I can't remember nothing about drugs. I can't remember any of the students getting or drinking. It just wasn't accessible unless you borrowed it from your parents. And most parents didn't have the money for a bottle of rum or rye or something.
As you started your teaching career, what kind of major differences do you notice about the education system in Coquitlam?
Now?
Um, Back compare when you were like a child and when you were teaching.
Well, I just sort of summarize a bit about that. When I first started, we had about 41 kids, but they were all able to do the grade 6 work because they were all more or less of the similar ability. Because, like I said, some had been mainstreamed off into special classes or they'd been held back. And so, even though you had 40 kids, well, then Eileen Daly, our Minister of Education, came in and passed this thing saying that two things. Kids are never going to get strapped again, and the maximum you could have was 39 kids in your classroom. We thought, wow, 39, wow, that's going to be great. So anyhow, yeah, they could all do the basic work. And so then a lot happened when they got integrated back. Well, gradually the class size went down to about 32, 30. But all this time I was teaching special class, and I had the special needs kids for only my 12 students. So when I went back to the regular classroom, yes, we had 30, 31 in the classroom, but they had a wide range. So you might have some kids working at grade 2 level, some at grade 3, some at behavior. You had some ones that were autistic and some with Down syndrome, and not all at once, thank goodness. It was as stressful as having, and I would say more, than having 39 kids that could all work at the grade 6 level. So education has changed a big way, and who knows what the best answer is. I think a lot of your average to your above average students sometimes don't get all the attention they used to because these special needs students demand a lot of attention. As well as that, there is a mountain of paperwork with them. And they all have to have IEPs, which is Individual Educational Program, mandated by the government. And that is a lot of paperwork. And when it's prepared, you have to have all of the stakeholders involved, the principal, the counselor, the learning assistance teacher, if they were taking learning assistance, which they all were probably, and the parents. And lots of meetings, and a lot of time wasted in my particular point of view, because I had to go out and go to these meetings, and they said, no problem, Gary, we'll give you a TOC, a substitute teacher on call. And I said, well, okay, but in the meantime, I wasn't able to reach the goals and cover the curriculum that I wanted to, and you'd also hear in the school that your class was getting a little restless because to give them the TOC a run for their money, and you sort of felt a little bad about that. So education is as frustrating as it always, I guess it's at most frustrating level now, I feel, from all the other teachers with the stress. And you can see why some parents are sending their students to private school if they can afford it, because private schools seems to somehow be a bit more selective in their students. They say they're not, but they don't end up with a lot of the Down syndrome or the autistic kids that the regular public school system has, which demand time. Okay.
Was there any private school back then when you were part of the education? Well, when you were I remember I mentioned that when Winslow Junior High School went on shift, my parents found me a place in Our Lady of Lourdes, which was a private Catholic school at the time, for that 1 year. So it was a private school, but it was mostly a school that serviced this parish down here in Millardville Parish. I'm not Roman Catholic myself, but they were quite eager to take my money and let me go to university, or go to their grade. I guess it was the grade 7 at the time. But yes, but a lot of them, I don't know whether they were charging up. So I guess it was like a private Catholic school, but not compared to what
it is what private schools are now.
Do you remember the cost of tuition?
No, I don't. 'Cause my parents looked after it, and parents didn't have a lot of money, so it wouldn't have cost a lot.
Okay.
It was, our teachers were nuns, and the principal was a father, and but they did cover the curriculum, and it served my parents' purpose by not having me to be at home half the time, getting into mischief or whatever.
Was the curriculum really different back then? Was there any things that they have taken out?
Not so much that I can remember. Of course, we didn't have all the technology. We didn't have some of the PE specialists or the computer specialists or the music specialists. So, basic teacher did just about everything. And I can't remember too much French. I think French is just something that came recently. When I was teaching, we had a French specialist at the elementary level, and she came into my class twice a week to do some French. But she did all of the elementary. Let me say it. The grades 5, 6, and 7. They're French.
When you were a child, was there any parents' involvement at school?
We'd have the parents had a PTA meetings that they would go to, Parent-Teacher Association, and that was part of, I guess, the socializing, because we went to the school and parents had a meeting and met with the teachers, and that's about it.
Was there a favorite teacher that you remember as a child?
Well, I remember most all my teachers, and I was really pleased with all of them. So.
Is there any specific memories of a certain one?
Well, I can remember my grade 4 teacher, Miss Dalton. No, she was the principal. Miss Decker. And then I had Mrs. Dalton for grade 6 teacher. Mr. Crawford for grade 5. So they were all good.
After you moved to Malloyville,
Yes?
what kind of, was there more, what kind of gatherings do you guys do?
Well, that was just basically me by myself, because I bought the house by myself, and it was sort of halfway up the hill on Decatur here, and I was busy teaching and stuff, so any social get-togethers and stuff were back at our Porter Street School, where we sometimes played volleyball once or twice a month, or we had staff parties and things like that.
Was there also neighbors helping each other during when you were at Malloyville?
No. Basically just, well, I was, 25, 26, just basically doing my own thing, cutting the grass.
And what kind of time period would that be at around?
And it's when I bought it in 1971, I think.
1970s.
Early 1970s, yeah.
So, was there compared to when you were a child and when you were, I guess, in Malloyville?
Yes.
How was the community? How did news spread?
News. Well,
Between
I thought you were going to ask me, because my mind jumped ahead to how much different. When I lived in Malloyville, we had sidewalks and blacktop. Before, when we were up on Smith, there was no sidewalks, and it was a gravel road. So community news, I don't remember anything. Like right now, I've got the Tri-City and the news that comes to me for community news, but the news was the Columbian newspaper, which was based in Westminster, and they then moved out here on North Road. But that was the local newspaper for this community, which was, like I said, Westminster and Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam.
Was it Columbia?
The Colombian newspaper, yes.
Um, did you have that when you were a child already?
Yes.
How long did it last?
I don't know. They went out of business. I don't know when they went out of business. Maybe 20 years ago.
What kind of news do they usually put on the newspaper back then?
Community news. I remember I made the front page of the paper because I helped my dad shoot a raccoon in our backyard. The raccoon was eating our chickens, and so they had a picture of me with the raccoon and the gun. And so other local news and things like that happened, but that was a big thing. So I made the front page.
Was there any international news?
We had the Vancouver Sun, but I don't think we subscribed to that.
How about television?
Television. Oh,
Were
yeah.
you familiar with the television back then when you were a child?
I remember my parents got their first TV in about 1954. Black and white. We had giant antennas on the roof, 2 or 3 of them, for picking. We had one Vancouver station, CBC, and then if you were lucky and in the right area and your antenna was tall enough, you could pick up a couple of the American stations out of Seattle.
So was there only basic one local station?
Yes.
What kind of programs do they have?
Well, they had the news, and similarly, they brought some programs from the States. I can't remember too much. I remember there was one funny show with Chief Dan George called Caribou Country, which had a lot of wit in it. I remember us watching it as a family.
How long do you guys usually spend on television each week?
Now or in those days?
Back then.
Oh. We had school and homework and stuff. Maybe if you got everything done, you might watch some at night, but maybe an hour. I remember there was a series when I was in high school called Peyton Place, and that was on from 9 to 10, so we tried to watch that on one night, because it was judging from, it was one of the more racy shows at those times. Nowadays it's nothing, but it was anyhow. Talk about these young people getting in trouble, but that's about it.
Was television popular around, like, with your peers?
No, it wasn't a big thing. Now, what did become popular afterwards was transistor radios. When the transistor radio came out, everybody had to have a little transistor radio to walk around, listen to the music up to their ears, and that was a really popular thing.
What year was it when it became popular in your neighborhood?
These are tough questions. Let's see. I would have been 57, probably about 1962, 63.
What would be? How many stations do you guys have for the radio?
We had a couple. I think we had Red Robinson coming on as on one of the radio stations. So I think there was about 4 or 5 in Vancouver.
And what would be on the radio station?
Rock and roll. Elvis was popular. Del Shannon, things like that.
Was there any news on the radio, or was it just all music?
Oh, there would have been some news, but we were just interested in the music.
How was telephone?
Telephone. Oh yeah. We had a telephone. It was mounted on the wall in the house. There was a special cutout in the stucco. Or is it gyprock? Stucco's on the outside. I think gyprock with a little shelf there, and had the telephone. And we were on a party line, which was us and about 3 other houses. So you picked up the phone and somebody might be talking, so you just hung it up. If it's an emergency, you said, like my kid split his head open, I need to phone the doctor or something. But yes, it was on the party line, and it did have a dial tone. And I can remember we had to dial, and the phone somewhere else on the party line was 2911, or anyhow, whatever. It was something like that. But anyhow, it was about 4 or 5 people on the party line. And then after quite a while, the BC Tel switched over to one telephone line. We only had just one telephone in the house.
Did you have the telephone ever since you were a kid, or was it later introduced?
I can remember, I think it was always there.
It was always. Do you remember when did the telephone line became single line from party line?
No, I'd say similar to 1960. A lot of things happened in the 60s.
What was some major world news that you remember back then?
Oh. I guess the biggest thing when I was in grade 12 was John F. Kennedy was shot. And we were in study hall then, and the teacher announced that. And then I think the next day, or the day after, anyhow, school was closed, in North America for half a day, so we could watch his funeral. So that was a big something. Cuban crisis, we were all concerned that was going to be the end of the world. And then we got into the Korean War.
Were you affected by the Korean War?
I can't remember too much about it. Must have been in high school, maybe going to university during the Korean War.
Were you, as a child, were you always told about the World War II that had recently ended?
Yes, well, my dad was in the World War II. I'm a baby boomer, or post-war baby. Yeah, he was in the Second World War. He marched down Columbia Street there when they all got together to go off to war. He was in the Navy, and his job was, he was in a little corvette, which is a smaller boat, which was part of a convoy that went back and forth across the Atlantic. And that was his job. And on the ship, he was in charge of maintaining the electricity, working with a lot of pipes. So as a result, he got asbestosis, which was asbestos in his lungs, which we figure shortened his life a little bit as a result of the Second World War. So a lot of people that didn't die during the war, there was a lot of complications after the war. These are good questions.
As a child, was religion a very big part of your community?
Oh yeah, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, my parents went into Queens Avenue United Church in New Westminster, and we'd go into Sunday school and meet some of the friends and stuff. I can't remember, but there's a lot of churches in Coquitlam in those days. There must have been a reason that we drove into the Royal City.
How about major celebrations like Christmas or Easter or
Yeah, okay. Well, we had Christmas holidays. We had a big Christmas tree and did all the Christmas things, the gifts with friends and family. Not so much for Easter.
Was there any community events for Christmas?
Not that I can remember.
What are some other major events that were celebrated in your community?
Well, we got the May Day celebration, and that's about all that I can remember. Like I said, it was sort of agrarian society at those. Everybody's sort of working from dawn to dusk, so there wasn't anybody that had idle time to organize a festival or do something. They had more down here in Millardville because they have holidays for a variety of saints and doing things, but up at the top of the hill where we lived, there wasn't a lot of things going on.
How about when you moved to Millardville? Was there lots of Christmas celebration?
No, not so much, because that's when I was first teaching. I was working, doing that job.
So you talked about building your own houses.
Yes.
Was the house design really different from when you were as a kid compared to when you built your own house?
Yes, our house that was built after the Second World War was a basic square box, basement, and then 2 stories. And it had 1 bathroom, and it still only has 1 bathroom, I think. And then when my parents moved to the front yard of our house and built another one, it was more of a long rectangular house, and it had walked into ground level, and then it had a couple of bedrooms downstairs and a rec room, as they would call it, and a bathroom, and then upstairs was the kitchen and the bathroom and the bedrooms, and that was really something to have 2 bathrooms in one house. The house that I built myself 30 years ago, after we sold our house in Millardville, different kind of design. It's what they call a front-back split because it was a narrower lot, but it's a bit longer, and yeah, and now it's got 3 bathrooms. So, but it's still standing. It's still in a pretty good neighborhood.
Was there a basement at your house when you were a child, or what happened?
When I was a child, there was a basement in the house, yes, that we'd play around with, and the stairs came down in the center, so you could run around in the basement all the way around the stairs, and a back door out, and then the stairs up, because that's where the parents had the freezer, and we had talk about the house. We had it was a wood furnace. We had to. My dad had to get up early in the morning and light a fire to get the wood. And I remember it was a really big thing when we switched to oil, and we had to chisel out a track in the cement floor to put the oil pipe in, and big oil tank in the backyard, and we had this huge furnace the size of a car for blowing the heat around. And that was luxury because you could just turn the thermostat on and you could get heat, and you didn't have to go down and light the fire, make sure it was gone, split the wood, let the wood come in. Because in those days, we would take out the basement window and throw the wood into the basement and then stack it all up. And didn't have to do that anymore. So we ended up, did the big wood bin become more of a rec room, and they did. So that was luxury.
What year did it change from wood to oil?
Oh, well, wood to oil. Let's see. Oh, I think when I was just finishing elementary school, I think about 1957.
And was that a very popular thing around all the households?
Yes. We did not have natural gas. I can't even remember when natural gas came to Coquitlam. But yeah, it was oil or wood stoves. And as a result of, to back up a little bit, because of the wood stoves, I mean, we had some really dense fog in Coquitlam. Because as you know, if you got little dust particles and the moisture, so we had some fog that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face when I was walking to school and things like that, because of burning all of the wood. And we don't get that anymore because we don't have the dust pollution from the soot.
Was there? Do you guys have a pet as a child?
Yes. Well, I could have all the rabbits I wanted as pets, but we had a dog, a little cocker spaniel, and cats, lots of cats, because Cats kept the mice down and the rats away. Didn't think we didn't have a lot of coyotes, because I remember all the cats were outside and they'd always seem to survive. Nowadays, cats don't survive too much with the coyotes, but yeah, we had 6 or 7 cats.
Was having a pet a very popular thing in your neighborhood?
Well, most people had cats for controlling the rodents. We had this little dog, but I can't remember other people having dogs. I remember riding my bicycle and a dog jumped up and bit my leg. But I guess somebody else must have had dogs, but yeah.
2 minutes left on tape.
Oh, how about your relatives? Did they live relatively close to you back then as a child?
My grandparents, both of them lived in New Westminster. My grandfather on my dad's side sold life insurance, and my other grandfather worked on the trains going from here up to Fraser Valley, and then the old interurban, I think it was called, and also the interurban line went into Vancouver. He worked on that for a while.
How often do you visit your grandparents?
Well, they died a long time ago, and also my parents, because I'm old.
Oh, back then.
Oh, back then. I guess once a month we go into the, you have to fire up the car and be a big thing.
So.
It might tie in with shopping in Sapperton, because shopping was then Woodward's. Woodward's in Westminster was the big shopping center, the big store to go to. So if you could tie in with going to Woodward's, getting some groceries, and visiting your grandparents at the same time.
And what kind of transportation did you use?
I was a 1947 Monarch Ford.
So what's having a car a very popular?
You more or less had to have a car out here, so most people had cars. Remember the guy across the street? He had an old Model A thing that chugged along thing, and it was into the. When we even had our newer car, because we got a '57 Ford, he still had this old thing chugging along with no seats. Well, seats with a blanket over it and stuff. So yeah, more or less somebody had some kind of transportation. We're just about done?
Yeah.
Good deal. Just ran out of tape. That's okay.
One more question, or?
One more question? Do you have any questions?
No.
Well, I thought it was a good last one. Is there anything we've forgotten? Is there something you'd like
No,
to add?
I can't remember. I think we covered just about everything. Oh yeah, you did say something about activities. I just remember now, when we take the bus in, Friday night was a big thing, skating at the arena in Westminster. So if you could take the bus in Friday night and they'd drop you off underneath the Patella Bridge. You'd walk up the road through the park and stuff with your skates, and we'd go ice skating. And they'd play Buddy Holly kind of music and stuff, and we'd skate around and meet new girls there. And so that was something.
Okay.
Great.
All right.